Hi guys, Andy May here. Welcome back to the channel. So I need to finish my face of makeup and we are on part 2 of makeup basics. So I'm going to go kind of over bronzer, contour, blush, and highlight in this video, the different type of brushes, all that fun stuff. So let's just go ahead and get into it. So I feel like one of the big things that kind of irks the crap out of me is contour bronzer and how people kind of interchange everything however the hell they would please. I didn't wear bronzer for a very long time because I just didn't know how to properly use it. I had a bronzer, but I did kind of use it as I thought bronzer would go where the sun naturally hits your face, which is actually where the hell it's supposed to go. But when I started watching a lot of YouTube, a lot of people just put a ton of bronzer, like right here, like they're carving out their cheekbones, which doesn't really make sense when it's a warm bronzer. So when you're kind of looking at contour and bronzer shades, there's a pretty easy distinction. Now I am going to use the NYX face palette just because it's easy and I can kind of give you some examples here. So when you go for a contour shade, and I'll show you the Physicians Formula Bronze Booster Matte Sculpting, because it has an excellent, you know what, I'm going to use this one instead. It has a really amazing distinction in this little palette. I hate that this thing doesn't open all the way up. Kind of makes me want to break the package. But this right here, the more cool toned color, is the one that you want to use for your contour. That's where you want to do the natural shading of your face to either slim it out, get rid of your double chin, whatever you're wanting to do. And then this more warmer shade is what you want to use to bronze your skin. That's the bronzer shade to kind of put on the places where the sun would naturally hit your face. If you want to kind of match your skin tone, find one that works as more of a shade color on your face instead of something so warm. Now for, I know deeper skin tones, a warmer tone like this will actually work as their contour because that looks like the normal shading of their face. But for most of us medium and fairer people, this is more of what you want to go for, not this. But it's really everyone's preference. Like, I know that it bugs me when I see people do it, but really it's your makeup and you can do it how you want. That's just kind of, when I watch more of the makeup artists that are on YouTube, they don't point to this for contour, they point to something more like this. So I'm just gonna go with the makeup artists that are on YouTube and go with a cooler toned, lighter toned shade type of tone for my skin tone, for my actual contouring. And then when I go to bronzer, there's a couple different type of bronzers. You can go with a warmer bronzer like this. This is a little warmer than I would prefer. Or you can go with a less warm bronzer to kind of bronze up your skin. And you kind of have the difference between a matte bronzer and a shimmer bronzer. There's so many different selections, but it is what it is. For me, today I am going to use the NYX little palette here. I prefer to contour with two different types of brushes, one of two different type of brushes. I like a more, set this on my lap so it doesn't fall off, a more domed shape like this so I can kind of just go into the hollow and buff it out. And this is really the only area that I contour on my face. I don't try to get rid of my double chin. It's there's really nothing I can do about that guy. It is what it is. Or I go into one like this, which is more of an angled type of face brush, and I run and do kind of the same thing. This is the only one that I have like this. This is my favorite. This is by Echo Tools, and this is by Wet n Wild. So cheap and affordable, and really nice quality actually. So I like to just dip a little into the contour, tap it off, and I work it right here. And I just kind of buff it out. I don't do any extreme contouring because, again, I'm a 31-year-old mom and wife, and this is not my job. I'm not an Instagram model or anything weird like that. So I do normal everyday makeup. Thank you very much. And I just kind of buff in this circling motion. Sometimes I'll go up higher. It just kind of depends. And then I have shades that are like the Balm Desert that has more of a, let me not blind you with the mirror, more of a reddy tone to it that I really like, but I use that one more as a bronzer, not a contour. So moving on to the bronzer, you do have a couple options when it comes to that. You can go with a matte one, you can go with one that has more of a satin finish, you can go for one that has more of a shimmer finish, like the Balm Desert one. You can go with one that has more of a reddy tone. I just kind of stay away from the ones that look orange on my skin tone. Like, I don't want to go that warm. I prefer, if it has a warmer undertone, I prefer it to be more of a reddy undertone, because then it kind of looks like you spent the day at the beach and you had that like sun-kissed, sunburnt tan type of skin, if that makes any kind of sense. That's what I prefer personally. But I am going to go into this shade here. I'm not telling you the shades. This shade here, because this one feels a little orange on me. This is darker than what I need, and this one just kind of fits for me. I do only really use one type of brush. I use a fluffier brush because I'm not trying to get like a bronzer helmet or anything like that. I just want to bronze up my skin and make it look like I have seen daylight, I promise. And I kind of work it along the top of my forehead to kind of where the sun would hit, because this part of my face does get sunburned. And then I kind of work it into my hairline a little here. Now, if you have a smaller forehead, you definitely don't want to bring it up here because it's going to make your forehead look smaller. If you have a more narrow face, you're not going to want to focus it on the sides because it's going to make it look skinnier. There's just certain things that you learn for your shape face, and on that I can't really help you. And then I do take some more and I kind of bronze my whole cheek area before I even put on blush. It's what I prefer to do. I don't know. But I don't concentrate it just in this. I kind of do my whole cheek area. Sometimes I'll run it down my neck, especially if I'm needing to kind of color match a little more. And then I do what I feel is weird. I don't do nose contour. Like, I don't take a little brush and make my nose skinnier or a cuter ball on the end. Not something I'm worried about. I do dip into my bronzer and I run it along my nose because I don't know why everybody wants to run like a line of highlighter down their nose and make it like this super sharp ski slope kind of shape. I don't understand it because I live in Florida. We go to the beach all the time, and never ever have I ever gotten a sunburn where this has stayed fair and not got sunburned. Like this, your nose gets sunlight, like it gets sunlight. So it's just not something I prefer to do. Now I will, if it's really matte, like right now, my face is not naturally matte, so I would not highlight the tip of my nose, but I understand why you kind of highlight a little or do a little bit of a I just don't see why it should be glittery and shiny. I don't know. It's, again, all personal preference. This is just the basics of how I do my makeup to kind of help some of my friends out, and it's going to be really weird to tell them I'm doing these videos for them, but it's the easiest way because I've had a couple of people just been like, hey, can you help me with my makeup? Can you teach me how to do this? And I'm like, but there's so many factors. So I feel like maybe this will help those people that are like, I want to start, but oh my God, there's so much crap on YouTube. Where do I start? Kind of thing. So that was bronzer and contour. Now we're going to move on to blush. For blush, there are different types of blush, and there's different tones of blush, and really it's just finding a shade that you like and complements your skin tone. You also want to kind of take into a factor, do you want a shimmery blush? Do you want a matte blush? Do you want a satin blush? There's so many different factors and so many different preferences. I really recommend kind of starting with like e.l.f. brands, Wet n Wild, Essence. They make really nice blushes, really great contours, really great bronzers, and kind of get a feel for what you prefer before you delve in and, you know, put your money into high-end items. I promise you, I'm not just saying that. These are all Essence blushes. I got 5 different ones. This is a Wet n Wild blush. I just recently decluttered a couple, but I mean, they have different tones, different colors, and these were all, you know, under $5. Same with this guy. And this one's by e.l.f. It has a great bronzer, a great blush. These guys are Essence and e.l.f. or Wet n Wild. So there's really great affordable options to kind of play. e.l.f. plus e.l.f., Essence, Wet n Wild. They're all super affordable, really great products, 9 times out of 10, and they are cruelty free. So I really like these brands. But for today, we're going to go in with my favorite blush of all, which is Too Faced Love Flush Blush in Baby Love. It used to have this little bunny print. The bunnies have long since disappeared. You can see the T and the D for Too Faced left printed in there and kind of the flowery thing on the outside, but that's just the way it is. And for blush, I have two different brushes that I kind of prefer to put on my blush with. If it is a more pigmented blush, I prefer a stippled brush. That way, not as much is getting applied to my cheek and it really buffs it out really nicely. This one is by e.l.f. I also have the Real Techniques one and I think it's just a Real Techniques one. But I really like these brushes, especially if you're working with a cream blush, which is always an option. But with cream blushes and cream contours, that's not something that I do. I should probably rewind a bit. It's not something that I personally prefer or tend to do, but with those, you kind of want to put those on before you have powdered your face. And I prefer a stipple brush for that. It just blends it out really nicely without disturbing your foundation. Today, we're going to go with my other favorite brush, which is just these super like fluffy type of brushes. They pick up a decent amount of product. I do tap off, and I personally like to put the majority of the product here and kind of work back. And that's the way I do it. I don't really swirl most of the time. Feels kind of weird. I just kind of brush it on and brush it back. And I'm only going into my blush one time because this one is pigmented. And it does have I don't think this one's necessarily shimmery, but it has a sheen that's to it. And I like it. Blush is also very personal. All of this is very personal. You can go heavier if you want to, lighter if you want to. It's really just up to you. I just prefer a lighter washing of blush. Most of my blushes are more neutrally natural flush type blushes. And then lastly today, we're going to talk about highlights. And there are quite a few. There's just lots of preferences for it. So for me personally, I have two types of highlight that I really prefer. I like a cream highlight, to be honest. This is by ColourPop. This is a color Hippo. I've used this one a nice little bit for a lavender highlight. This one I do tend to put on with a smaller stipple brush, like this guy. I just kind of dip into the product and then kind of stipple, maybe a little swirl depending on it if I don't want to disturb my foundation. You really should put this on before powder, I feel, but a lot of times, like especially with the ColourPop ones, I don't have an issue with them messing with my foundation as long as I'm applying with this or my fingertip. I'll kind of swirl and just kind of dab and blend everything in. I do really like cream highlights. Now when we get to powder highlights, things get a little different. So first I'm going to talk about the different types of brushes that I typically use. I prefer a smaller brush like this that I can kind of dab in and work and blend in. These are the brushes that I prefer for powder highlight. A lot of people like fan brushes. I'm not one of those people. This actually came in a set with the little domed one for contour. I haven't really used this one, but most of the time I don't like fan brushes because I don't like where they place my highlight. I just don't like it. I'd prefer it to stay here and kind of go up a little. I don't want it to like go down and onto my cheek where I tend to have more pores. Now for the actual highlights, you can go with a more subtle highlight. For this one I have the Wet n Wild Color Icon in Reserve Your Cabana. And this one is just a light sheen that it kind of puts off. I've made it really pigmented on my skin so you can see it. It's not like that whenever you put it on your face. Or you can go in with one that has more of an impact. This is the Wet n Wild Highlighting Powder. What is the name of this one? Light of My Hibiscus? Precious Petals, my bad. And I prefer personally a more pinky toned highlight that is like champagne colored. That's what I personally prefer. I don't prefer a more gold type of, but you see how much more, like this one looks almost matte now compared to this one, even though that looked shimmery a minute ago. So this one just has more of a sheen. And I prefer these type of highlights just because they don't have like a glitter in it and they just make a nice little reflect on your face. Now, if you're wanting more of oh, this doesn't bend all the way back. That sucks. Of a glitter type of highlight. You can go with something like this. This is the Anastasia Beverly Hills Glow Kit with Nicole Guerrero. Does this have a name for it? Or was it just the Nicole Guerrero one? Probably just a Nicole Guerrero one. And there's several different shades in here. As you can see, I mean, I've used it. I've dug in here. But these do have kind of a glitter that's in them that I don't prefer. Now, if I apply it with my finger, you don't see it as much. You see how intense it is, though, compared... Remember how intense this one looked a minute ago before I swatched this one? So the intensity is higher, but this one does have a slight... like shimmer glitter that's in it, which I don't typically prefer. This one's a little more difficult for me to apply. But for this one, I am going to go in with my little brush here into the Wet n Wild one. Again, I always top off my brushes, and I like to kind of lay the streak down and then buff it out. I don't want an intense highlight today. That's the thing too. I can lay it on like this, and you're going to see a lot more. But when I go in and buff it out, it just looks, to me, more natural and not as intense. Because I am wearing this stuff to work, you guys, and I don't need to look crazy at work. So there was the rest of the face as far as bronzer, contour, blush, and highlight. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Give me a big thumbs up if you did. Subscribe if you'd like to see more, and I do hope to see you in the next video. Bye, guys.